father was a president of the United States. I was kidnapped, and I was replaced around the age of 10 years old by the man that you knew as John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. Our government did that.
25 years ago, John F. Kennedy Jr. died in a plane crash that shocked America. The investigation found no distress call, no final message, nothing. But archived recordings recently discovered tell a different story. There was a transmission. It came from his plane after the official timeline said he was already dead. The audio quality is poor, filled with static, but you can hear his voice. He's not talking to air traffic control, he's talking to someone else. Someone who knew he was coming down before anyone reported him missing. John F. Kennedy Jr. was born on November 25, 1960. In Washington, D.C. His father had just been elected president 17 days earlier. The baby weighed 6 pounds 3 ounces and had to be closely watched at first, but he quickly bounced back. He was the first child ever born to a president-elect, and his birth came just 8 weeks before JFK moved into the White House. The newspapers called him America's baby, and people across the country fell in love with this tiny child who had just stepped into history. As his family walked into the White House in early 1961, John Jr. became the youngest person to live there since 1893. From the very beginning, the spotlight never left him. By the time he was 2, John Jr. had turned the Oval Office into his playroom. In October 1962, a photo showed him crawling through the secret panel of the Resolute desk while his father sat at work. That one image became a symbol of the Kennedy family and what people began to call Camelot. But not everything behind the scenes was happy. Jackie Kennedy had been struggling with deep sadness after giving birth. It wasn't something people talked about back then. JFK often invited photographers in when Jackie wasn't around, since she didn't like using the children for publicity. By early 1961, they had already asked reporters to stop snapping pictures of the kids through the fence. Even so, Caroline and John Jr. kept playing inside that desk, building a little world of their own. Then came November 25th, 1963. John Jr.'s 3rd birthday. That was also the day of his father's funeral. Outside St. Matthew's Cathedral, he stood beside his mother and gave a tiny salute as the casket passed by. It lasted only 2 seconds, but it broke the hearts of millions. A photographer captured the moment from 150 feet away, using a bulky Hasselblad camera. That one photo was seen by 175 million Americans and countless people around the world. It was the first funeral ever broadcast globally. Jackie had quietly told John what to do. He gave her his prayer book, then raised his little hand. Afterward, he was taken back to the White House by his nurse and Secret Service agents. Reporters who had followed him since birth cried openly. To give John Jr. and Caroline some normal life, Jackie set up a small private school right inside the White House. From 1961 to 1963, up to 20 kids attended this school on the 3rd floor. The parents all chipped in to pay the 2 teachers. These kids got to see presidents arrive on red carpets and were told off for yelling, "Boom, boom," during 21-gun salutes. When JFK's helicopter landed, everyone would shout, "Your daddy's home!" Jackie even took Caroline to the sandbox in the solarium at night. This setup gave John and Caroline the most protected education anyone could imagine. It cost a lot to keep the press away, but Jackie thought it was worth it. There was one nickname that followed John Jr. all his life: John John. But it wasn't something his family ever called him. A reporter once heard the president say, "John, John," quickly, and assumed that was the boy's nickname. The press ran with it. Jackie's assistant later said John hated it. He found it annoying, but no matter what he did, it stuck. Even after he died, newspapers still used the name. That little misunderstanding showed just how powerful the media could be. Even one small mistake could become part of someone's identity forever. After JFK was killed on November 22nd, 1963, Jackie feared for her children's safety. In May 1964, she moved the family to a 15-room apartment at 1040 Fifth Avenue in New York, right across from Central Park. John went to St. David's School, which cost $2,400 a year, then to collegiate. Even with security watching him, John would sneak into the park alone, forcing agents to search for him. He loved pulling pranks and was obsessed with crazy foam and silly string. Jackie would buy them for him from toy stores nearby. By age 7, teachers noticed he had trouble sitting still. That restless energy never really went away. In June 1968, tragedy struck again. John's uncle, Robert F. Kennedy, was assassinated while running for president. At just 8 years old, John stood next to his mother and sister at the funeral in St. Patrick's Cathedral. Over 2,000 people filled the place. After that, John changed. He started hiding in closets and didn't want to talk. Jackie was terrified and moved the kids to Aristotle Onassis's island of Scorpios. Psychologists later said seeing 2 close family members murdered before age 9 had a deep and lasting effect. It may have been one reason why John kept chasing risky experiences later in life. One of the most shocking moments came in 1971. John was 11 when he found his mother's birth control pills and decided to steal them. He hid them in his backpack. Jackie panicked when she couldn't find them. She thought the staff had taken them, but soon found them in John's school bag. It wasn't just a silly prank. Family doctors believed John was trying to sabotage Jackie's new relationships. She was dating several powerful men at the time. The whole thing was kept secret, known only to her sister Lee and the family doctor. Then in the summer of 1972, another terrifying moment happened. John was swimming in the Aegean Sea near Onassis's yacht when he was caught in a dangerous current about 200 yards from shore. He went under for nearly 45 seconds. Christina Onassis, who was an Olympic-level swimmer, jumped in and saved him. John had swallowed so much water he coughed for hours. Jackie was so scared she banned him from swimming alone ever again. Onassis added new safety rules across the island, but after that, John seemed drawn to danger even more. It was like he needed the adrenaline. By 1975, John was 15 and starting to act out. At Phillips Academy in Andover, he was caught stealing a $12 compass. Police held him for 3 hours. Jackie hired top lawyer F. Lee Bailey and paid $15,000 to make sure there were no charges and no paper trail. In another case, he took a $3 pack of gum, and the store was paid $2,000. Jackie had a secret fund of $50,000 to handle these issues quietly. He was also drinking and trying marijuana, but Jackie made sure it never reached the press. Despite the trouble, John graduated from Phillips Academy in 1979. Jackie was there, proud and smiling. He was popular and had lots of friends. He wasn't known for big scandals during school, just charm and the occasional mischief. From there, he went to Brown University and studied history. He graduated in 1983, and again, Jackie was there to see it. He didn't get expelled. He didn't plagiarize. He just lived like a regular college student, famous, but still trying to find his path. In 1981, he took a summer internship at the Center for Democratic Policy in Washington. It was his first real political job. The group focused on helping the Democratic Party recover after losing the 1980 election. John researched political trends and started seeing how policy really worked behind the scenes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was important. That summer gave him a taste of what his future could be, either in politics or something close to it. After college, John went to India for 3 months. He studied at Delhi University and focused on real issues like food, health, and education. He didn't live in luxury. He slept in cheap hotels, sometimes on embassy floors. He wanted to understand the world, not just visit it. He bargained with tuk-tuk drivers and avoided diplomatic privileges. It was 1983, and Indira Gandhi was still in power. The trip changed him. He stayed in touch with people he met there for years, even after he launched George magazine. When he got back in 1984, John took a job at the New York City Office of Business Development. It was his first serious job. He was trying to figure out who he wanted to be, separate from his family name. He wasn't sure if he wanted to go into politics. This job helped him understand public service from the ground up. He wasn't coasting on privilege. He was building his own path. This was when he started leaning more toward journalism and social impact. Everything he'd seen and done, from India to city work, was pointing him in a new direction. John F. Kennedy Jr. started his legal career in a way that stunned everyone. In 1989, after graduating from NYU Law School, he took the New York bar exam just like 7,000 other people. About 70% passed. He didn't. That failure became headline news because he wasn't just any law student. The press gave him a cruel nickname, the hunk that flunks, hoping it was just bad luck. He tried again in February 1990. He failed again. That second failure hit even harder. His sister Caroline had passed on her first try. His cousin Robert had also failed once, but then passed. Everyone was watching, and the pressure was crushing. He told reporters, "God willing, I'll be back in July." If he failed a third time, he'd be fired under the rules at the Manhattan DA's office. But in July 1990, he finally passed. He was relieved, but the damage had already been done to his confidence. When he started at the DA's office in 1989, his salary was just $30,000 a year. For a Kennedy, that shocked the media. They said he was slumming it, but he took the job seriously. He was one of 68 new prosecutors who joined on August 21st. He didn't ask for special treatment. He focused on small fraud cases and landlord-tenant disputes. But in court, he was something else. He handled 6 trials and won every single one. His first victory came on August 29, 1991, against a burglar who literally fell asleep in the apartment he was robbing. They called him the sleeping burglar. That case marked the start of JFK Jr.'s perfect trial record. But then came something harder. In 1991, he was assigned a case involving someone connected to the Kennedy family. It was about insider trading. Suddenly, he wasn't just a lawyer anymore. He was a Kennedy who might have to prosecute a family friend. Inside the office, people whispered, could he stay fair? Would he protect his family name or do what was right? It was a moral test. He stayed on the case, trying to keep everything professional, but the pressure never left. In 1992, he went even deeper into the world of crime when he joined a mafia investigation. He didn't sit behind a desk. He went undercover. He joined a raid on a nightclub linked to the mafia. He pretended to be someone else, interviewed witnesses himself, and faced real danger. That kind of work had never been done by a Kennedy before. His family had faced bullets and scandals, but not the kind of street-level crime JFK Jr. was dealing with now. His bosses started trusting him more. The job was changing him. He wasn't just a name anymore, he was earning respect. But from the very first day, the media never left him alone. When he walked into court on August 28, 1989, reporters and photographers were already waiting. Every time he argued a case, it became a photo opportunity. The press covered his hair, his clothes, his smile, not the cases, not the victims. His salary was a joke to them. They said he could have been rich, but chose to suffer. Some believed he was only there for attention. Others whispered he was getting special treatment. The courthouse became a stage. Witnesses felt it. Defendants felt it. Even other prosecutors had to adjust their schedules to avoid the cameras. What was a normal day for others became a public event for him. And yet, he stayed 4 years, from August 1989 to July 1993. He won every trial. He passed the bar, but he was exhausted. The attention never stopped, and it didn't feel like justice anymore. After he left the DA's office in 1993, he turned toward media. In 1995, he launched George Magazine. The first issue came out in September at Federal Hall in New York, the same place where George Washington once took the oath of office. He used $20 million of his own money and brought in Hachette as a partner. But the first cover caused a storm. Cindy Crawford posed as George Washington with bare abs and a powdered wig. People were shocked. Critics laughed. They said it was a magazine for people who didn't understand politics. But the first issue was packed with 175 pages of ads. At the launch, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet George." In 1996, the magazine took a risky turn. They released an issue focused on political sex scandals. Inside, JFK Jr. wrote a personal essay that hinted at his own father's affairs. He said politicians often chase an idealized alternative to their life. His family was furious. Jackie Kennedy had spent years protecting the family image. Now her son was opening old wounds in public. Sales went up, but his family relationships were damaged. They felt betrayed. Then, in 1997, things got worse. JFK Jr. posed half-naked in a photo shoot for his own magazine. It was supposed to boost attention. Instead, advertisers fled. Brands didn't want to be linked to that kind of image. His own staff rebelled. They said he had crossed a line. Some editors threatened to quit. At the same time, he was criticizing his cousins, calling them poster boys for bad behavior. The magazine was falling apart. It was no longer a bold experiment. It looked desperate. In 1998, another scandal hit. Stephen Glass, one of the writers at George, was caught making up stories. He invented sources, quotes, even entire companies. When Forbes investigated one article, They found out the company didn't even exist. JFK Jr. had to apologize personally to Vernon Jordan, one of Bill Clinton's advisors, for the fake quotes. It was a huge blow. Journalism ethics were already under fire, and now George was part of the problem. By 1999, the money was gone. The magazine had lost $10 million. He flew to Toronto to meet with Canadian investors just 1 week before his death. Hachette wanted out. There were even rumors that someone on staff had stolen money. Advertising was down 20%. His publisher said JFK Jr. kept turning down big interviews that could have saved the magazine. People like Princess Diana and John Gotti Jr. Instead, he stuck to unknown political figures. After his death, Hachette took full control. They kept losing money. In 2001, they shut the magazine down. In 1997, before everything fell apart, he had thought about running for governor of New York. A secret poll showed 65% of Democrats liked him. He was the most popular Democrat in the state, but people still said he wasn't ready. They said he had no experience. It crushed him. He asked his friends, "Will people take me seriously?" He walked away from the idea within weeks. In 1998, he hosted a CNN interview with Fidel Castro in Cuba. The government reportedly kept an eye on him. There were rumors that something in the interview revealed too much, but the details were never clear. What was clear was that JFK Jr. had access to Castro that few Americans ever had. Some thought it was brave, others called it reckless. In early 1999, he even thought about running against Hillary Clinton for Senate. Political insiders said Clinton's team was worried. He had the popularity to win. One union leader told him that if he ran, people would tell Clinton to stand back. But then some memos leaked. They said his campaign would be nothing but nepotism. That word stung. It echoed everything said about him before, that he was famous but not qualified. Just like that, he gave up the idea. Around the same time, he wanted to act. He had already appeared on Murphy Brown in 1995. Playing himself. Everyone said he had real charm. He began auditioning again in 1998 and 1999, but Hollywood producers didn't want him. They said his name would overshadow any role. No one would see the character, just JFK Jr. Plus, he didn't have any acting training. Even with all his fame, he couldn't break in. By mid-1999, he was working on a book. It would have exposed political scandals, something only he could write with his connections. The publisher was offering $750,000, but George Magazine was failing. His partner, Michael Berman, had left. His marriage to Carolyn Bessette was strained. Friends said they argued a lot. The magazine was bleeding money. His personal life was cracking. And now he had to write a book too. Everything was piling up. They first met in the early 1980s during a trip to St. Martin, but their real connection started years later at Lee Radzawill's wedding in 1988. That's when John F. Kennedy Jr. and Daryl Hannah began a relationship that would last over 5 years. It wasn't peaceful, it was loud, messy, and always in the tabloids. Jackie Kennedy, John's mother, didn't like Daryl at all. In fact, John's biographer said that to be loved by John, you had to be accepted by Jackie first. By 1993, Daryl was tired of the attention. She told Entertainment Weekly that even her plumber asked about John. They kept breaking up and getting back together. When they finally split for good in 1994, John had already started seeing Carolyn Bessette. He didn't give up on Daryl right away, but in the end, the damage was done. Their new relationship, John and Carolyn, was far from perfect. On February 25, 1996, they were seen fighting in Washington Square Park. Paparazzi caught it on video. Carolyn shoved John. He tried to pull the engagement ring off her finger. According to a close friend, Carolyn had been furious over a wedding they attended. The bride used John's fame to try and get media coverage. Carolyn felt John should have walked out, but he didn't. After the fight, she stormed away, and John sat on the sidewalk with their dog. The video shocked the whole country. Even his magazine co-founder was angry that John didn't warn him, afraid it would hurt their sales. By 1998, things got darker. Friends said Carolyn was caught doing cocaine off their coffee table. John joined her and told the friend not to worry, saying he was a Kennedy, and this wasn't his first time. Carolyn had reconnected with a male friend that year. They kissed, but she pulled away, saying she couldn't do this. 2 days later, John went to the man's door and punched him. He warned him to stay away from his wife. In April that year, they started marriage counseling. John said he didn't want to be one of those Kennedy men who ignored their wives' feelings, but they were barely holding on. In 1997, John had more stress. His family was in scandal. In George magazine, he criticized his cousins, Joseph and Michael Kennedy, calling them examples of bad behavior. Joseph's marriage ended in controversy, and Michael was accused of having an affair with a 19-year-old babysitter. Joseph had to apologize in front of a crowd. Michael separated from his wife after 16 years of marriage. John was trying to keep his own life together while his family fell apart, and his magazine was struggling too. By 1999, his marriage was on life support. Friends said they were calling it a marriage on probation. They were still in counseling. Carolyn only agreed to go to Rory Kennedy's wedding after John promised she'd never have to visit the family compound again. They were both broken by jealousy, media pressure, and drugs. Friends said their love had highs that felt like magic and lows that were unbearable, but they kept thinking they had time to fix things. On July 16, 1999, they boarded a plane to Rory's wedding. They never made it. John wanted to fly the plane himself. His instructor had offered to come along, saying it was a risky trip. The weather was bad and the route was difficult, but John said no. He wanted to do it alone. He had just 310 flight hours. Only 55 of those were at night. He had just 3 hours flying that plane alone, and only 48 minutes of those were at night. He had bought the $300,000 plane in April 1999. He was still wearing a cast on his ankle from a paragliding accident, but refused to let anyone else fly. At 9:41 p.m. that night, the plane began its deadly spiral. Experts call it a graveyard spiral. He lost control and didn't even know it. He wasn't trained to fly by instruments. The sky was hazy, and he couldn't see the horizon. The plane turned sharply right, tilted down, and hit the ocean at around 200 millitrim. No distress call was made. He didn't know he was dying. Witnesses said they heard explosions that night. Conspiracy theorists believe the crash was no accident. Some say there were explosives triggered by altitude. Others think Navy SEALs were waiting in the water. Some even believe John faked his death. They claim he was planning to run for Senate against Hillary Clinton and that he was a threat. There's no proof, but the stories won't go away. Some say a seat was missing from the wreckage. Official reports never mentioned that. Still, the mystery haunts people. On July 21, 1999, Navy divers found the wreckage 116 feet below the Atlantic. All three bodies were still strapped in. John's body was in the cockpit. Carolyn and her sister Lauren were nearby. The sonar found the plane at 2:00 a.m., and the bodies were pulled up by 4:30 p.m. Autopsies said they died instantly. John had such severe leg injuries that his kneecap was found inside the dashboard. A diver claimed he found a piece of scalp with blonde hair on equipment, but that wasn't confirmed. Their ashes were scattered at sea from a Navy destroyer. After the crash, investigators looked into the plane's condition. It had passed inspection on June 18, 1999. It had 622.8 flight hours then. When recovered, the plane had 663.5 hours, meaning he flew about 40 hours in that last month. The digital voice recorder was destroyed. The battery was missing, the autopilot system wasn't turned on, his GPS was still on. All the tools were there, but John didn't know how to use them when it mattered most. When he died, his estate was worth as much as $100 million. The battle over it lasted years. Everything went to Caroline Kennedy's children, Rose, Tatiana, and Jack. The most painful part came in 2001. The Kennedy family had to pay $15 million to Carolyn's family in a wrongful death settlement. The Bassetts had asked for $20 million. The Kennedys first offered $7 million. After 18 months of painful negotiations, they agreed. Carolyn's mother almost walked away unless she got a formal apology. Even personal items like John's Scrimshaw set were handed out quietly. There were small donations to charity, but most of the fortune stayed within the family. In one of the strangest moments tied to his name, on November 2021, hundreds of QAnon believers gathered in Dallas. They believed JFK Jr. would return from the dead and help bring Donald Trump back to power. Some said he faked his death and had been working in secret all these years. Others thought JFK Sr. was also alive. One woman told reporters that JFK Jr. would be Trump's vice president. Families were torn apart by these beliefs. One man followed the movement for months, chasing rallies, waiting for someone who would never appear. In 2007, 8 years after the crash, audio tapes from the FAA were released. They revealed that John's last contact was a simple thanks to New Jersey controllers. After that, nothing. At 10:05 p.m., a 21-year-old intern at Martha's Vineyard Airport called the FAA worried. He said, "Kennedy Jr.'s on board. They want to know where he is." The dispatcher refused to give any info. The intern backed down. He said, "It's not a big deal." That delay cost them. The search didn't start until after 2 a.m. It was too late.